Hello, gorgeous people, and welcome to another TV Central one-on-one podcast. I'm Aaron Ryan. This is episode 7, 2023, and the fourth of the Australian Survivor Elimination episodes, although this is the fifth elimination overall. I'm still a little confused as to why Sarah was eliminated. Too nice? A swayer? A punishment for not continuing to be one of George's subjects? Who knows? Let's talk to Sarah Marschke now. Sarah, thank you for joining me at TV Central.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, so much to get through as we have to cover 3 episodes as Rogue was not available for an interview. And then we had a non-elimination episode as well. So let's try to do this in order first. So just one question about Rogue's elimination. She was a hero. So you were not as, involved with her, but she seemed to upset everyone all round. What was the feeling with Rogue amongst the group?
You know what? Villains and heroes actually didn't have any communication. That was something big between us, is that we weren't allowed to communicate, and you don't even have time to, because you're there just completing those challenges, unless you're in the middle of a wrestle and you're like, hey bud, how are you, or nice to meet you. We actually did not have a chance to speak to them ever. So I never got to meet Vogue personally, apart from we just would say hello when we first met each other, and then that was the last that I actually heard of her. So I don't know her actually.
Oh, fair enough. I guess you probably watched the episodes though, so interesting. But I'll ask one of the villains when we have them on next. One of the heroes. In terms of the non-elimination episode and Gerry being picked to come to the villains, and having now watched the episodes, do you think that was a good choice by the villains, or are they going to regret that decision?
I feel as though on their behalf it was a good decision, because at the end of the day they want to win challenges, and Gerry had a foot injury and he's an older man, and unfortunately he wasn't as strong as some of those athletes who were quite strong in those challenges and could win those challenges. So I think it was a smarter option. They knew that Paige could really help them win the prizes, the food, and help with immunity. So it was smart on their end, but also at the same time, us villains are called villains for reasons, and we're very good at persuading him that he is one of us. And I think he's officially come to the dark side.
I think so. Let's move on to the latest episode. Villains lose again. I mean, you guys have more than enough capable people in your team. I don't think there is any obvious strength of the heroes. I mean, maybe Sean, but what is going wrong with the villains on these challenges?
I think just we don't have the athletes, the professional athletes that the heroes do. I mean, what they have 2 professional AFL players who are so strong. They have Flick, who's a professional surfer. They have a surf lifesaver. He saves lives for a reason. He's a very fit person. And I think when you think about the villains, we have Liz, who's a pole vaulter, and myself, who's played rugby league for 14 years, but none of them the rest of them are actually professional athletes. So they haven't been taught certain skills like some of those heroes have. So that we found really difficult. I mean, Sean is just, he doesn't even seem normal. He is so amazing. He can just absolutely smash any challenge he puts his mind to. And he ran the whole hero squad. I mean, we needed a Sean, and that's something we didn't have. So we didn't end up winning as many challenges as we would have liked to.
Do you think it wasn't a team cohesive type thing? I do notice with the heroes, they just seem to work together, and they had this, but with the villains, it's kind of go at it alone type thing. Would that be fair or not really?
I do agree with you. There was a lot more bonding within the heroes than the villains, as you would have seen. George and Simon are at each other's throats. So if there's any time to make a decision, it's them 2 going at it. Yeah. So it's disagreeing with each other all the time. There wasn't that happy little family like the heroes, where someone takes control and everyone listens. Heroes, it was constantly competing who's going to run this challenge. And that's something that didn't work for us.
All right, so let's get to why you were eliminated. Let's talk through some of the reasons given. Let's start with, because one comment was that you're a swayer. What do you say to that?
I don't disagree with them. I was that person who was sitting in the middle, the one who was on Simon's side and saying, you can trust me, let's vote George out. But then also telling George that he can trust me, let's vote Simon out. And at the end of the day, they both figured me out. And that put me in a difficult position because they knew I was working with each other. And we know just how much hatred is towards those two. So in the end, they couldn't trust me either side. And because they do run the group, it was easy for them to persuade the other contestants.
What about that you're too nice?
I get that. I am too nice, and I'm good at sweet talking absolutely anyone. I can talk my way into anything. So I get you can see that as a threat. And that's something I did with the villains, and they picked up on it, is that I was sweet talking Simon, saying, yeah, Simon, let's go get George out. Whatever you need, I've got your back completely. But then I was also doing that to George and convincing George, I've got your back, bud. Let's vote Simon out. So it backfired. You should never go into Survivor being too sweet.
And you sort of touched on this. What about you having the gift of the gab?
I thought overall I was going to do so well because I had that athletic ability to smash out and win those challenges. And I can talk my way into anything. I have a good social game. But the thing that I was lacking to my tribe mates was the loyalty. And that's something that I should have known, is that when you pick an alliance, you need to make sure you are with that alliance and you're not promising to anyone else. So no matter how athletic I was, or how well spoken I may have been, I put myself in that position now that I'm reflecting on it, and I did it to myself.
There's something that really annoys me about this season. It's just funny. At the start of the season, there seemed to be a collective that George is too dangerous and you need to get rid of him. The tide started changing, and he kept worming his way in. And people were saying it was deliberate now, and it's helping their game. But he's just picking you all off one by one now, and has an immunity idol. He masterminded your demise. Why is everyone hanging on to this guy?
It's because they see him as a shield. And the fact is, everyone's going to want to vote George off before they vote off themselves. Think about it. Sean's working with George because they know when it's time, they're going to vote George off and not Sean. Same as Simon. Simon really wants him out, but is also understanding that George is a perfect shield for him. So it's one of those tough things where you can't trust him and you're not trusting him, but you need him to survive.
Okay, so from the editor, it seems George and Simon are the captains of the two sides of the villains. They don't like each other. They want to get rid of each other. You touched on that. But rather than that playing out, them getting rid of each other, they are safe and picking off everyone else. What is your view on Simon and George as I suppose, captains of the two sides?
It's dividing the villains at the end of the day, which is difficult. I mean, Simon's captain of half the tribe, and then George is captain of the other half. So it's literally George versus Simon the whole time, and it's making it really difficult. I didn't realize until I've watched it back that George had such a big impact on controlling our tribe mates. I had no idea that the Spice Girls was even a thing, and that he was controlling the girls. And this is things you don't see while you're on the island. You don't see those private conversations, and you don't see the confessions. So that was a big shock to me. I thought, if anything, Simon was running the show more than George, but they were both head to head, and they've completely divided the tribe, which I didn't know because George is so good at acting too. They completely divided us, and it's made it really difficult for us to trust each other, because you're either on Simon's side or you're on George's. And I thought, stuff that, I'm in the middle here. And that's what got me into trouble.
It did. Do you think both of them can worm their way to the end or near the end, or do you think they're going to come unstuck sooner rather than later?
The one thing that I noticed about George and Simon is their social game is impeccable. They are good at getting you to trust them, and they tell you these things and they manipulate you and say, no, trust me, I will do whatever it takes to keep you safe, Sarah. So I feel like they could probably go all the way, considering they're so good at getting people to trust them. And that was my issue, is that I completely trusted both of them and I thought I was in such a good position. So I do think that they're going to do really well.
I asked Mimi this question and got an interesting answer. So I'm going to ask you too. 6 episodes in, that's about 6 hours of screen time, but 312 hours have passed because episode 6 started with day 13. What are we not seeing on TV?
I guess you're not seeing the random conversations that we're having, and I mean, you go crazy when you're sleep deprived and you're starving, and the random conversations that don't make sense. I mean, I think Channel 10 actually showed a behind the scenes of me teaching the tribe mates how to do a Miss World pageant walk. And that's some of the stuff we do to get by time. I mean, you're sitting on an island, so we're doing all these random little things, and we're just trying to survive, make sure that we're ready for the rain tonight, that we're safe and we're dry, we've got enough dry wood. So really, when we have that free time, we are just gathering supplies and just doing random things. We've lost the plot. We all can't think straight, and we're just talking absolute rubbish. And the camera crew are just thinking, what is going on here? So it's just us talking absolute rubbish to each other. So it's not necessarily something you want to see. It's just a whole heap of people hallucinating.
So let's get to, as we wind this up, get to tribal council itself. I understand to a point what George did. There were 2 camps. I was expecting you to get a set number of votes, and then it would look like George was going to get a number of votes from Simon's team, but it ended up being unanimous. My only guess was Simon didn't have the numbers for George, so didn't want to play that card. Is that the way probably it went?
Yeah, it's the way it went, because George just got to too many people. He got to Gerry before Simon could, and it's difficult because Simon realized that he was just outnumbered, and at the end of the day, Simon wants to be safe, so he's just going with the majority here. But again, I didn't hear the conversations. The only conversation I heard was George. So when I saw Shonnie and Liz talking to Simon and Geordie, I just automatically thought they're just talking about getting rid of George because the trust was there. So I guess at the end of the day, Simon knew he was outnumbered, and rather than be the next target for George, he thought, let's just go with the majority, which is something I would have done, because you don't want to be targeted. And that's just what he did. He just went with everyone else, unfortunately.
And you made a little comment at the end before you left. No pushing Miss Grease, wasn't it? Miss
Yes.
Grease down the stairs. So what was the lie about? Was that just a bit of fun?
Yeah, so the reason I was a villain is because I pushed Miss Grease down the stairs. They didn't know it was an accusation. They didn't know it didn't really happen. So it was just sort of me having a little fun and telling them that's the reason why I'm a villain. And it just made it a lot more entertaining for me because they would ask so many questions. It was really fun. But at the end, I had to make sure that I told them, look, I didn't do it, or I would have left the competition and they would have thought I was this animal that's pushing people down the stairs and putting them in wheelchairs. So for me, it was just something really fun. I've never been a villain before, so I really wanted to play to that.
You were too nice. I would hardly believe that anyway. But Sarah, I'm not sure what lesson you were supposed to learn here. Don't be nice. I mean, that hardly seems fair. Great.
Yeah, I think that's a lesson. Don't be too nice. You need to play dirty sometimes to survive in this world. So that's something I've taken away from it. Is it's nice to be nice, but not too nice.
Yeah. Well, a great player. You were sacrificed at the end, but you were great. Fantastic job, and thank you for joining me here at TV Central.
Thank you. My absolute pleasure.
Sarah Marschke, fifth eliminated from Australian Survivor. Australian Survivor, 7:30 Sunday, Monday and Tuesday on 10 and 10 Play. TV Central will be talking to almost every eliminated contestant. There'll be a podcast available around lunchtime the day after an elimination. That's it for this podcast. For all the latest news, podcasts, streaming info, guides and ratings, head to tvcentral.com.au. Until next time, I'm Aaron Ryan. Thanks to Sarah Marschke. Bye for now.